This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
3 words. We are hungry. We are hungry. It's my hope with the Economist to sit down and have a look at what is intended by the interventions of the IMF, what it has achieved in certain parts, and how it would sit with Nigeria at this time. And most importantly, what line is the government towing? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
So let us jump right in, given the civil unrest. Now, the protest that is going on in some cities, I should call it, people are coming out and they're protesting the rising costs and the high cost of living. Reports have started to come out that certain steps are being taken to crash the prices of some of these essential commodities, grains in the north and so on and so forth. We're seeing the government saying they're going to open up the reserves and try to bring the prices of these commodities down. They're going after hoarders. So again, they're saying this is what they're doing to try to bring the cost of some of these goods down. But what about things like energy? How do we, contend with the rising cost of energy? Because, again, the government came out and says they have discontinued subsidy. There was no accommodation for it in the budget. But we are told today that some form of payment is being made because this is not the true price of petrol. The IMF report seems to confirm this. But, again, the IMF is saying, look, we need to do away with these policies which are not targeting the intended people, like electricity subsidy, which is subsidized to the traders. I'll get the exact figure in a second. The short question is this. The IMF's recommendations, are they in our favor or are they not in our favor? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
The IMF is acting like a central bank internationally. And one of the functions of a central bank is a lender of last resort. When any nation has either fiscal or balance of payments or even other financial challenges, they can approach the IMF for a loan in order for them to tackle whatever problem that they have. And the IMF charges next to nothing for any economy that approaches it alone. And it does not, even though it does not charge much for the loan, it expects such an economy to implement certain reforms. And the IMF is trying to make you implement these reforms so that the problems, the reasons that have you to be in this problem will not reoccur. That's the objective. That's one objective. The second objective is that you would have the capacity to pay back the money that they have lent to you. So if you look at it, I know some people have demonized the IMF because these policies, to be honest, are ruthless. Ruthless in the sense that they don't care about anything apart from results. Results in the sense that your economy does not fall into the same trap that has made you to approach the IMF for loan, and then for you to have the capacity in the nearest future to pay up. So they don't care about any other thing. They can throw the entire population under the bus as long as these two objectives are achieved. And that's why some people consider them very harsh.
So,
but if you look at it,
yes, go on. Go ahead.
If you look at it, they're just being ruthless. They're just trying to be efficient. I know that as a government, your mandate is the welfare of the people, and when you're trying to meet up with IMF conditionalities, a lot of suffering, a lot of hardships may be visited on the population. And certainly, for many economies, including Nigeria, we have not, despite meeting up with these conditionalities, we have not sustainably become a good or a sound economy that we don't have to run to the IMF again for such loans, or even we find it difficult sometimes to pay up. So I think there is a need for tweaking in these conditionalities because they are not actually achieving all the results that the IMF intend for them to be achieved.
Okay, now Egypt. Let's look at this. Another African country that is currently, I think, it's being reviewed. It's implementation of IMF policies or conditions, I should say. Egypt. Now, in Egypt, the removal of subsidies in places like fuel, electricity, and even food, they say has improved their economic stability, but costs are still high. Citizens are not happy. There was even a level of civil unrest. Is this the path we are walking towards in this country? Surely timing has to count for something. Don't you think, for example, the discontinuation of subsidy and then the harmonization of the exchange rates coming just 6 months after that absolutely dreadful Naira swap policy? Isn't that a bit too much for an economy that is still trying to sort out its direction? Isn't that a bit too much for it to bear?
I agree with you. For us here, particularly, the current implementation being done around subsidy removal and the unification of the foreign exchange market, the implementation is not properly thought out. I think the authorities failed to have a good strategy on how to go about it. If you ask, in all honesty, these two policies are good. They are noble. They help the Nigerian economy. But if you go about it the wrong way, this will end up doing more harm than good, as we're seeing. Because they claim they have removed subsidy. In all honesty, subsidy has not been removed. They are still paying for subsidy, and as long as they don't do the right thing, they may continue paying for subsidy in perpetuity. And then for the unification of the foreign exchange too, they didn't put anything in place. They didn't have a coherent plan on how to go about it. They just did it, and it might be impossible for us to unify the foreign exchange markets as if we continue the way we are doing it now. So if you look at it, it's just futile exercise. So the right things have to be done if we really want to achieve the desired results. And the casualty, all of us will suffer because of these policies, more especially when they are not implemented in the right way. And the government will not achieve anything at the end of the day. So everything has to be done properly. Don't just rush into implementing policy, no matter how noble, no matter how excellent you think such a policy is or your goal is. The way you go about it is as important as achieving that goal. I think that's where we got it wrong in Nigeria.
Okay, now let me take you back to part of my introduction at the beginning. I painted a picture on the discontinuation of subsidy, which the president, upon his inauguration, said was not accommodated for in the budget. That was his inauguration speech. He dropped that one, and then subsequently the unification. So these are some of the conditions that the IMF says that we should, implement in Nigeria. So are we acting out that script? Because the next thing in line is the electricity subsidy. Do you think this administration is walking that path, or could it be something else from your observations?
I think they'll be a bit careful now. My own opinion, though, I have not read their minds to say so. But because they have implemented two of these policies, fuel subsidy removal, when in actual sense it has not been removed, but we know prices have gone up, and untold hardships have been visited. The unification, we have seen how the Naira has gone under, right? So I think they'll be circumspect when they want to implement the subsidy removal when it comes to electricity, because people are steaming because of the two policies, and Nigerians are not happy. Nigerians are angry, and so many people are willing to do a lot of things that the government may not be comfortable with. We have seen protests all over. I think this may, the operative word now may likely get worse, because these two policies are likely going to exacerbate the cost of living crisis even worse than it is at the moment. So the more the cost of living crisis becomes worse, the more people are likely going to come out, and you cannot tell how it's going to end up. So one has to be very careful when you're trying to implement another policy that will worsen an already bad situation. So if I were in the shoes, I would not do that. I think there are a lot of things that can be done, or even if they want to do another thing, I think they have to resolve these two first before they can bring another policy.
Okay, now talking about the electricity subsidy, according to the IMF, they're saying, look, we need to do away with it. The government says that the subsidy on electricity this year alone will cost us 3 trillion naira. And the minister let us know that we are only budgeted 450 billion for electricity subsidy this year. Isn't that a sort of indication towards their direction? Because this is their budget. This wasn't an inherited budget. Isn't that the government showing its hand, saying, you know what, we're only going to contribute this much to subsidy of electricity. We know it needs 3 trillion. We're only going to drop 450 billion because we don't intend to continue. Isn't that the message being sent out by the government? Or is it a monetary challenge that has made them peg it at 450 billion, looking for maybe some more funds later down the line? What are your thoughts?
I think the electricity subsidy, as it is at the moment, is not sustainable. And everything must be done to fix that problem. And I think one of the things that can be done is we need to meter homes and make sure that all payments due to Nigeria's electricity companies are paid. Just like in AEDC, for example, I've seen the news where even the State House, EFCC, CBN, Ministry of FCT are all owing. And these are the big boys. If you bring the common man, some of them without meters, some of them with illegal connection, I think that will go a long way. If you ask me, if that can be resolved, not only within the AEDC area of jurisdiction, but all over, I think that will go a long way in reducing the amount of subsidy that needs to be paid, right, for electricity. But we have this problem, sadly, in Nigeria. We tend to chase shadows more than the actual thing. I can cite an example for you. We have food crisis. The major problem is insecurity. People cannot go to their farmland because they may be kidnapped, they may be killed. That's the number one problem. There are other problems. But the authorities are going after supermarkets, sealing of supermarkets, saying orders, talking about exports, all these things. That's not the primary problem. So in the same manner, this electricity problem can be resolved, if not absolutely, to a large extent, if certain things can be done right. Sadly, we don't seem to have the mind to do the right things. Maybe they are not actually easy to try to get all the revenues that should be coming to the electricity bodies, to try to meter everybody. So it's not actually easy to do the right thing. But that subsidy, 3 trillion, is a lot of money. And if the government is not removing that subsidy, then they must find a way to fund the subsidy. And it is going to be really tough for them to raise money because we're already running a deficit budget. And even the revenue they are projected, the chances of raising such may be slim. So for you to have additional expenditure beyond what you have planned for is not going to be easy for the authorities. But in all honesty, if I were in their shoes, I don't think I would remove electricity subsidy now. I'll try to resolve the fuel subsidy, try to resolve the unification that has done so much damage, that has made Nigerians to be hungry, that has caused so much cost of living crisis before thinking about visiting another problem on the population.
Okay, now let's look to options to source funds? Because it's been very clear that there will be a great need for sourcing of funds in this country because we have not maxed out our capacity or our potential to generate revenue. The IMF, as you rightly said, they offer very, very attractive loans at very attractive interest rates, beg your pardon. Now, I know that their loans to very low-income countries carry 0% interest rates. So they charge 0 interest rates for very low-income countries. But in countries like ours, it will be very, very low, we understand. Are there alternative sources for Nigeria should Nigeria be looking to alternative sources to raise these funds? For example, there has been a conversation on the continent regarding joining the BRICS nation, which is now longer than the BRICS. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We understand that other countries have come into that fold now. Is this an option for Nigeria? Should we be looking in that direction, or the Chinese, perhaps?
Well, Nigeria tried to join in. The last time they were trying to, the BRICS group was trying to recruit members. Nigeria tried joining, and we were rejected. And they opted for some countries, even on the African continent, including Ethiopia, of all places. And they turned down our own requests. So it's not about we just wanting to join BRICS and then we're a member. They have to admit us. And if they are not willing to admit us, we may not be able to join like the last time. I'm not saying that because we were rejected once, we cannot try again. But I think joining a club like the BRICS should not be a priority for us. I think what we should be interested in is resolving our own domestic problems. The problems we have within Nigeria are actually solvable. It's just that sadly we don't seem to have the political will to do the right things. The political class is basically interested in self-aggrandizement and state capture. So I don't think anybody is really serious about fixing the problems. So, and if you are this type of a country, I don't think anybody will take you serious when you want to join a club. We are a country that is blessed beyond measure. We have potential beyond limit, but having potential does not suffice in itself. Congo has more potential than us. Congo has more resources than us. Nobody talks about Congo today. So it's not about having potential. It's not about having prospects and a bright future. We need to get our acts together. And we're capable of doing that, I think, if the Nigerian people decide that we want really what is good for us and we have the right people at the helm of affairs. And apart from the IMF, there are other options. We can go to domestic markets in Nigeria, maybe float treasury bills and other bonds to raise money domestically. And we can also do that internationally, though the interest rates are higher than approaching the IMF. Those loans may not come with conditionalities, the way the IMF loans come with such. But each one has, whether you're going to the IMF or you're floating bonds or treasury bills domestically or internationally, each one has its upsides and its downsides. And I think the people in authority need to weigh what is in the best interest of Nigeria as a country now and in the long run. Anything that you start today that is not sustainable is not worth it. So if I were in the shoes, I think I'll explore all avenues and I'll try to weigh my options. Whether it's approaching the IMF or approaching development banks, even African Development Bank, or floating Euro bonds, or raising money domestically, we have a lot of options and we can choose to explore any one. So we have a lot of options. We are not limited to only approaching the IMF.
Okay, but just to quickly go back to the BRICS and the rejection of Nigeria, the vice president did come out at that time and say we did not apply to join. I think it was a blog that started out that information. So yes, he did attend the meeting, but he says the country did not apply to join. That was what Vice President Shettima told us at that time. So you're saying we shouldn't be in a hurry. We need to sit down and weigh our options and so on. But while all of that happens, the energy situation still persists. 47 billion, I think, is how much the MDAs in the Federal Capital Territory are owing the power companies. But regarding the other cost of living, it's still what it is. Every day now, literally, because we run a business that has a lot that needs to go into it, procurement and so on and so forth. Every day we need to sit down and look at what the dollar is and what people are charging for this, that, the other. Because every couple of days prices are changing because they're reflecting the changes in the Forex window. That's where we are at this moment. But we're just a business. For everyday Nigerians, what hope is there for them? How do we bring the price of goods back within reasonable margins? I think that's the best way to put it. As your closing remark, please.
The major problem is food prices. And like I mentioned earlier, we need to tackle insecurity. I think when we tackle insecurity, that will go a long way in eradicating almost the entire problem. Another thing is our mechanization of agriculture. We need to go beyond subsistence agriculture. The Nigerian authorities for a while now have been advising all Nigerians to go to the farmland. In fact, for civil service, they say apart from civil service, you can get engaged in agriculture, right? But you may not be allowed to do other businesses by law.
Yes.
I think that's the wrong thing to do, because if you look at the countries that have succeeded in the agricultural sector, those countries have a tiny fraction of their population engaged in agriculture. What they did was they increased their mechanization. They increase they get better breeds of farm inputs. Nigeria has 0.3 horsepower per hectare, according to some sources. And we have maybe something in the region of 20,000 or 22,000 tractors in Nigeria. That is abysmal. It's really abysmal. India or China, each country is like 7 times our population. We're 200 million, they're 1.4. Those countries, one of them has almost 1.7 million tractors. So you can imagine. So even if we just triple the number of tractors to maybe 60-something thousand, that will go a long way in increasing our horsepower per hectare, and it will, to a large extent, help with the problem of food prices. Then other parts of inflation, the central bank is talking about reducing ways and means, printing of money. That will help, because inflation largely is attributable to money supply. But we have structural issues too. We have other issues that compound the problem. Our exchange rate is also a problem. And in recent times, the devaluation and the depreciation have gotten out of hand. I think something needs to be done. I'm not saying they should bring back Naira to 100 Naira to the dollar. No. But let's just make it stable. I think that will go a long way in helping with our cost of living crisis.
Okay, very quickly, how do we stabilize it? Does it mean supporting it with maybe foreign reserves and so on for a while? Can we afford it? Do we have that amount?
What the current central bank is doing is not sustainable. There are fundamental problems within the economy. One of them is oil theft. You have to tackle that problem of oil theft in a comprehensive way so that Forex can start flowing the way it should. Another problem that we need to tackle, investments coming into Nigeria have reduced. We need to stimulate investments. And people not just bring their money, we have to make our country the safest or the easiest place to do business. And if people are comfortable bringing their money, people will bring it. We also have Nigerians living abroad. We can have diaspora remittances, but people will not just bring their money like that when they have doubts about repatriation and so on. So a lot of things can actually be done to solve the problem of foreign exchange rate in a sustainable way. Sadly, I don't think we are doing anything serious about any of them at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much for your time on The Big Story this evening, Dr. Samson Galadima Simon, an economist. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now, take some messages, and when we come back, we will meet at the round table. Stay with us.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.